Hi, my name is Alice Bonham. I'm a 3D artist who's been polygon modeling for about a year now. If you briefly look through my channel, you can see that I made a video about a year ago showing the models I'd made in my first 3 months of modeling and learning it on a blender. Obviously it's been a while since now, as you can see. If you look at my Instagram page and if you want to follow, just nudging you towards that, you can see I've done some more complicated models now, and my texturing's a little bit better, and overall I've done some more out there, got a bit more confident. Just, well, it's been a whole year, so I've done it for a little bit longer than 3 months. um but I'm making this video for myself because recently I had to make a model that I had already redo a model that I had already done when at the very start of me learning to model. um, and I thought that I would get both of these versions, the version that I made when I was a noob and the version I made now that I am a little bit more than a noob. I thought I'd get them, compare how they were modeled and like how I did it and like my style and what I've improved at. Um, just more for myself to as kind of like just to show myself what I've come from, but hopefully, uh, if anybody else who is a beginning modeler and has just got into this as a hobby or a passion, hopefully you can look at this and see full on evidence of just how much you can improve in a matter of time. So, before I get started on um, the models themselves and the comparison of the models in question, I thought it'd be worth mentioning that since a year ago, since I made my last video, when I was just making cool models of whatever on Blender, I've actually started a college course for games production. So this means that instead of making big models that are just there to look cool, and they don't have any restrictions or requirements, I've started making models uh, for video games. So before, where you'd have a model like this, which has thousands of polygons and thousands of triangles, um, kind of like me being blasé with it and just not really caring about how much memory the model takes up. Now I have to make models that a little bit less polygon. So, and just so for a game, when you get into a game, uh, you have a model which takes up less memory, and so that the game can perform better and blah 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 blah. So instantly, so just keep that in mind when I'm comparing the two models, because one was made to look cool. Was made The way you can tell which one is which is one was made in Blender a year ago and was just made to look cool, and one was made in Maya the other day, um, intently for a video game. Now that I think you lot get the explanation, I'm just going to go into the model. So the models in question were a model of the iconic Pixar Lamp. You watch Toy Story, you watch bloody any of their other films, Finding Dory, all that stuff, and the intro will have the lamp bouncing on the Pixar ball. So I made this lamp um, a year ago for a little short film idea that I had. It was this idea of a girl getting ready to go to work and an astronaut getting ready to go into space. It was a little idea. It was like intersecting shots that would transition between each other, and this lamp was made for when the girl goes to the office, I think, in the storyboard. So obviously that's a little bit different from making a model for a video game, because if you're making any type of model that's going to be in like a VFX model or any kind of model that's going to be in a cutscene or a film, they need to be high poly and need to be quite realistic. And obviously, this goes back to me being a noob and only doing it for 3 months, but this is not really high poly and not very realistic. You can tell just by these little pretend vents that they're actually just coloured on. Like I just selected that polygon and just went, yeah, just colour it black and make it change the roughness a little bit. So obviously I hadn't done a very good job, but this model I think probably took, I don't know, I can't remember how long it took me, but I know that I basically got a picture of it from this point of view, if I get it up. So I probably just modeled it from the side so that it looked good at this angle. I don't think I think I can tell, you can tell just from looking at this bit that I hadn't really modeled the lamp in like a 3D manner. I just got the reference picture and I said, okay, well, I'll just model it so the silhouette looks like it, or so that the side view looks like the lamp from Pixar. But yeah, so that's already one issue with this model, is just that from the 3D it looks good here, it looks good here, but here the spine of the supports, it just looks flimsy. It's like, if I imagine that these are like little wooden sticks and you could just like snap it, like you could just snap this lamp and it's, oh no, the light bulb's broken and now you can't use it anymore, you're gonna have to send it to the guy who repaired Woody in Toy Story 2. So that's already one problem, is just perspective wise, and it's not really modeled from a 3D point of view. The other problem, going back to, I think this main body bit is where you can see the more like easily identified problems, is for me it's the screws, these little let me go back, the little balls, the screws that are meant to be there. So you can just tell I'd made these with spheres, and I just said, again, looking at it from the reference picture, I was like, oh well, the sphere takes up this amount of surface space on this plank of wood, and this one takes up this plank of wood. Oh, that does the job. If I just turn around just a little bit, I can see, oh well, that looks horrible. That breaks the illusion of it being a screw. Like, now you just see it and you're like, oh, that's a fucking little ball that's somehow inside all these planks of wood. It's not just a screw that would go through into that cylinder. The cylinder would maybe be a little bit more like down here, and then the screw would go into it. By the way, it's been a while since I've used a blender, so it's going to take a while for me to get used to, was it S for scale, G for move or grab, and R for, was it rotate. So yeah, I'm just kind of like looking at this point. Another problem is this massive cylinder here. It's just throws me off, because it's like, again, it goes back to me thinking you could just snap like these twigs and just snap it off, because the only real like support in between these bits is this massive cylinder that just, if it was metal, would just be so heavy that I think as soon as you would, let me see actually, come on, as soon as you twist it that way, I feel like it would just like plummet and go there. Even at the angle that it's at, like all of this here would just go and just go down there. So functionality wise, this support area, the app, I don't know the technical name, these twigs would just snap and fall, and the lamp just wouldn't be able to function unless you have it at maybe if you had it there and then this top bit you rotated, so like had that there, the top layer goes upwards, and then you just have the lamp like stood up straight, like good posture. So let's leave the body because I'm kind of just tearing it to shreds right now. And look at the actual lamp. Again, well, there's two things that immediately, now that I make models intended for video games, there's already two massive problems you can see just from this point of view. One, you've got this ginormous end-gon. Now, end-gon is a face that has more than... It's a polygon that has more than 4 vertices around the edge of it. So these would be quads. So they are quad shapes because they have 4 sides. It doesn't look like there's any tris, but a tri would be if you got an edge that went like diagonally across there. It's a triangle basically. So an n-gon is a shape that has more than 5 vertices on it, more than 5 edges, and I think this has, well, just a lot. It just has a lot of shapes. So again, my knowledge isn't that great, so I don't know the exact problems this would cause. Like, I think for animation, n-gons cause problems. And for any kind of item that is in movement, but for props, I don't think they're that big of a problem, but they're just I've been taught to exterminate n-gons at all cost. The other problem with this headspace that the lamp head is just how many faces it has and just how detailed it is. And it's like, I mean, can I do blacked out? I can't get the silhouette. I can't remember how you get a silhouette up, but it again for the film, I think this is fine, and I think because this was only going to be in like a frame of this little short film, I think it's fine. You know, the curvature of the head is good. Like you can't really see where it goes from one vertex to the other unless you're like really close, and because it's such a small item, it's fine. But just for a video game, if you've got a little prop that has that many faces, it's just taking up way too much space, especially this inside bit where you can, if you know what baking is, you could probably bake the detail of this inside bit for the lamp, but then again you need to do the light bulb, so maybe not, but you can definitely cut down on all of these faces. Like, I mean, if I knew how to get loop cuts, I can't remember how you grab loop cuts, but basically for the silhouette, and I'll show it off later, in the second model, you can cut off this loop, then this loop, every other loop, and probably still keep the silhouette. So yeah, that's basically the problems with the head. It works for the short film, but for a video game, you've got a massive n-gon and just way too much detail. So I don't like that anymore. Again, another little problem when it comes to like too much detail or too many polygons is these little rings. There's one on the bottom as well, but these little rings, obviously, um, in the model, in an actual lamp, there would be some kind of support surrounding where the head and the joints are welded together. Um, but I think you could probably cover these for a video game prop. Make you can make this look realistic with way less detail. Like I've just got a Taurus. I think the shape's called a Taurus, but I've just basically got a donut and just covered it around that cylinder. Um, and again, just kind of like out of laziness to say like, oh well, let's not make it one shape and let's just put a Taurus there and not worry about how much space it's taken up and how slow it'll make my computer go and how long it will take to render. Um, got the same thing with the spheres. Spheres. Uh, I could have made a screw out of a cylinder and just beveled like the edge of the cylinder, like make it a little bit smaller instead of the spheres. Beveled it a couple of times just so it's a little bit like smoother. Maybe put a boolean through it just so you got where the screwdriver would go into and where it'd magnetically connect. There's just other like better ways of getting these details that would look better and take up less, would cost less polygons and less time on your computer. So with the base, you've got a couple of errors even before I get into the topology of it. You've got this little grey strip that goes around this cylinder here. I believe this is caused because I hadn't sharpened. I mean, it looks like it may be the top edge. I think it's the top edge or the top edge loop or the bottom one or even the middle one. Either way, one of these edge loops isn't sharpened. So I think these branches are a better way of explaining it, or these little rectangles. So if you can see these rectangles really well because they are sharpened or hardened. Is the Maya terminology. So if you had this edge here softened, you'd almost get hard edge. You can see that bit. The shading is clear. Like the shading there is grey. It's a little bit darker here, and then here, the shading where you can see there's a difference between this face and this face, and it's quite a, you've got the clear line, you've got the clear edge to show you the difference in the shading and the color. If I had softened that edge, is it 2? Yeah, if I had softened this edge, then it would have more of a blend to it. The two grays, or even here, like this gray and this gray would just kind of like blend together. And I think that is a problem you're getting here as well, because you can't really see where the edge stops, and where, if I click off it, you can't really see here where it starts and where it stops. Like with the colors, they all kind of like just blend together. But sometimes softening an edge is good, like for these spheres. All of these edges are really hard, so what I was saying about the screw, you can tell it's been made. You can tell it's been made by a sphere because all of the edges of the sphere are hardened, and you can just see all the little differences in on the shape. You can see all the different shades of grey on the spheres. So there's a problem already with the hard edges and the soft edges. Here it's good, like on the actual base itself. I think it's quite good to have these as softened edges, because obviously it's a nice big curve and you want it to look quite metallic and smooth, so it makes sense there. But yeah, you've also got the torus that's actually added onto this shape that obviously adds a lot of polygons, and it just shows that I'm not thinking about the silhouette and I'm not thinking about how things really look compared to each other. Because if you look at that torus or that little donut, it's quite high poly, it's quite smooth, you've got a lot of faces there, it does the job, but then the base itself, what I was saying about for the film, for if I was making this model for the film, the head works because you can't tell where the faces connect. It looks quite seamless, looks quite realistic. Like as a silhouette, it looks smooth, it looks realistic, it looks good. But for the base, you can just see how big these edge loops are and how far away they are from each other. So you can just tell it's more low poly than the lamp head, which just it's just inconsistency in the model itself. And to mention functionality, now that I'm looking at it, the lamp head is ginormous compared to the base. Like wherever, if this lamp head is not, uh, which angle would be good? If this lamp head is not like directed like this or like that, and is not like well above the base, like directly above it, then this is just going to fall over. And especially with the supports, like this lamp just isn't going to function. And it wouldn't function for a game, and because of the supports, the main body and the base, this model doesn't really do the job for a short film either. So, with the blender lamp done, with the lamp that I made when I was 3 months into 3D modeling, let's get into the newer lamp. But before I do, I thought I'd explain why I made this lamp. Basically, so as I said, I study at a college now, my local college, and I study games design. And the college got signed up into a competition called World Skills. So World Skills basically work like worldwide, and they will host competitions for engineers, fashion designers, anything creative, any kind of like creative or unique career option. Because for a couple of careers like dressmaking or 3D modeling or just drawing, like it's a little bit harder to get into than an office job or a sales assistant or a teacher or something like that. So yeah, they held a international competition for a bunch of colleges and universities from England, and so I had one competition before. There was one phase of the competition before where I had to make a WAL, which actually, funnily enough, even for that phase of the competition, I'd made this WAL that you're seeing on screen, as this was the second tutorial I did when I started 3D modeling. So I was like, oh, I was pretty lucky that I had to redo a model I've already done. And then the same thing happened again. So, but fortunately, the WoW that I made for the competition was completely different to the WoW I made when I started. Um, Another thing about this competition is because it was for 3D artists that want to get into games, we had some of the same requirements that you would have if you're making a model in a game studio. So we had a time limit of 6 hours. We had to make the lamp with 6,000 tries or 6,000 triangles. We had to make the Pixar ball, which, if I show you, looks like that. So we had to make the ball as well in that time, and this had to be, I think, 1,000 triangles. So I'd hit that limit. But I don't want to show you how the ball looked in the final piece because, again, I had 6 hours and the ball suffered. The ball is where I took some liberties. So yeah, had to make this 6 hours. It was the first time I've been in a timed competition because the first phase we had about like 3 weeks to make the well, and you can see like I'd used the full 3 weeks and I'd researched how to make. It had to be a stylized, like cartoonish well, so I'd done research on how to do stone and wood, a bit more cartoonish, and it looked great. So yeah, when I have 6 hours, I had to prioritize certain things more than others. So unfortunately, when it came to the lamp, I'd focus just on the modeling more than the texturing at the end. So yeah, let's just get into it. The way that I made this well was I before I started modeling, I had a pose that I wanted to do. So I knew what pose it was going to be, but I thought I would do the parts. Well, the whole point of the lamp was functionality. So we had to make the body and supports look like it was functional. So as you can see here, like the planks all make sense. They all like the structure of it makes sense and looks strong. It looks like you can move it around, like rotate it a little bit, all that stuff. Um, you can move it around at that hinge in the middle, or you could move it up and down. So it had to be functional. But before I knew the supports are going to take up a lot of my time, and this is the part where functionality comes into play. So I thought I would do the parts which I could just do fairly quickly. So for me, in my mind, that was the base and the head. I started on the base, and here it is pretty high poly. I mean, if I get that face bit back up, it's 8,000 faces, and that is more in these areas. There's a lot of faces in these areas where I don't need to be, and I could have actually cut it off a little bit. So if I actually put some of the edges together and just did a bit of that, because obviously this is such a tiny part of the model, and I could have made, you need these faces for all of this bit, like all of the, I don't want to destroy the polygon, so I'll redo that. You want the silhouette, like I said in the Blender version, you want the silhouette to look high poly, and you don't want to really see the polygons that badly. Here you can see them a little bit, like they are. You can still, if you look close enough, you can still tell, but it's still more high poly than the Blender version. And if we actually look at the Blender version compared to the whole model, it's really tiny and the head is really big, where for this model, obviously the pose changes things, but the base looks like it can support the head wherever the head is actually positioned. But even then, now that I'm looking at it now, I would still make the head just a little bit smaller. So yeah, the base, and then let me check timing on how long I've done. I've done 7 minutes. I'll try and explain this now. But basically, with video games, you've got to make a high poly and a low poly version of your model. So this was the low poly, and this is the version that goes into the game. This is, as you can see, 3,940. And then this is the high poly version, and this is 11,000 faces to it. Now you can see, and this is what I tried to say with, which part was it? with the head on the Blender version. So like on the head of the Blender version, you can see there's just so many. So there's, god damn, I'm really out of touch with Blender. I need to work on it more. You can see here there's just so many faces going around and around the head, and you've still got them. Like you still got a lot of faces less going diagonal. Like as you can see here, there's so many, like they're basically perfect squares, where here they're more rectangle going along that area. But then if you look at the low poly, I've basically deleted all of the cylinders and all the faces that can be deleted but don't affect the model's silhouette. So, and then if I try and get a example, or if I try to show you through the X-ray, so if you look here, like, so let me get, so that's the low poly with way less faces, and then this is the high poly. Obviously, you have a little problem here, which I actually wish I'd swapped, and I would have if I had time. But even here, like, you look, this face here has been deleted, and was there another one there? And this face, this edge, and this edge has been deleted, and I think a couple more on this bit, and they still keep the same silhouette, and they are still close enough so that you can bake on the more detailed version, and it can still look smooth. So that's one of the things with modeling for video games. You've actually got to create two models of the same thing. I think I modeled the high poly first, so I would have made this base out of a little cylinder, extend that face, extend it again, and scale it outwards. Bevel these edges, bevel any edges that need it, like that one and that one, smooth it, and then once it's smoothed, delete any of the edges that are needed, like this edge loop going across that bottom bit, these ones in the middle, and especially this bottom face. Like if you look here, it looks like a UFO about to absorb you, and then if you look here, it just looks like a normal little ray of sunshine. So yeah, that's one of the things you've got to take into mind. And that's one of the things I had to keep in mind when I was modeling the lamp in 2 hours. So yeah, the second thing, so I focused on the parts of the model that I could model quicker and model the high and low poly versions for, and that was the lamp head and the base. But like I've already shown, like with this part, with making it low poly, because I had a time limit, I couldn't focus on making this bit low poly or anything, and my attention is drawn more to the frame, which is why I actually completely forgot to make an actual light bulb. So that is one thing with the Blender version that has it over on the new version, is it actually has a light bulb and it actually produces light. Let me just try and get it in, and yeah, it actually, so in terms of functionality, the Blender version could not stand up, like it just be too weak to support itself, but at least it actually provides light. At least it does what it was made to do. Whereas this version actually just, because of the light bulb gone, it looks a little bit more like a cup just attached to a lamp, a Luxo lamp head. So maybe it's actually pouring some wine into somebody's gullet. So yeah, but the big part of the functionality obviously is the structure, and this is where I'm pretty happy with my model, because it took quite a while. I don't have the image plane, but I did actually model off a reference that would be in the background, and the frames just look better. Like they look a little bit stronger. They're a bit thicker, both like I was about to say laterally, but I don't think that's the right word for it. Look, like these are so skinny and faced apart on this version, and then on the Maya version, they are very close, very much thicker. I think the beveling on the edges and the smoothness of the edges actually like help to that. Because the edges aren't very like they aren't sharp. They aren't just like one edge like on the Maya one. I think the edges being a little bit smoother shows they're a bit more worn. The edges aren't as sharp and it just makes them look stronger somehow. I don't know. And then yeah, a lot of one thing I've realized with video games in general, because I've also had to do a modular kit, which aka means you make a bunch of assets for an environment that can be repeated. So um, if you're modeling a block of flats, like a skyscraper of flats, you would make maybe one, and it's like a big rectangular box building of flats. You would maybe texture and model one of the sides of the flats and then just repeat that on the other three sides just to save yourself time. And I tried to do the same with the structure. So like you can see that these two shapes are the same. I think these two are the same. These two here, the same thickness and shape and stuff. And then also the because with this 6 hours that I had for the challenge, I basically gave myself an hour to conceptualize or think of what the model was going to be. And because they said functionality, I was like, well, how would the lamp actually work? So obviously I looked at the reference pictures and I was like, okay, you've kind of got a square here. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you've got kind of like another square here. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. But this was actually more of a hexagon because it's like 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it's actually like 6 shapes. And one of the big things I found when I was thinking of how to make it was the screws actually come in 2 lengths. So here you've got a screw going between these 2 planks of wood that is actually, well, it goes between 3 planks. So this is start, 1, 2, 3, end. And then you've got another screw which goes through like 5 different items. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for any shapes like that one, and this one, I'd use the free side, the free. I think I titled it the free screw or the free-sided screw or something, free lamp screw, and then for the rest of it, it's the 5 lamp screw. So, and again, it just goes into reusing it. One thing with these screws in this area, going back onto high poly and low poly and all that stuff, is they are intentionally really just low poly, like meant to be a screw, and obviously you think of a screw and it's round and it's got the little indents in the middle. But for my screws, because they're so pardon me, because they're so tiny, I was just like, make them really low. I think they've got, what's that? 1, 2. I think they're 8 subdivisions, or they've got like 8 bits going around them. Actually, I think it's 10. But make the supports just really low poly. Give more of the polygons to the head and the base, and then just focus on giving these polygons afterwards. So I'd literally UV unwrap the supports, and then I just added a bevel around all their sides, checked how many polygons that took up, and then it was like, oh, okay, it's cool. It's like, it's still, the model's still under 4,000 polygons, and I had 6,000 to use. which obviously would have given me enough polygons to do the light. But yeah, I'd actually seriously only realised that there wasn't a light like an hour after I modelled. I was just so tired, and I was like looking back on it, and I was like, oh, it actually wouldn't even function. So yeah, I haven't really focused on how long is this? 8 minutes. I haven't really done a good breakdown of the Maya lamp. Um, I said I used techniques, so again, to cut down on the polygons, I'd target weld, cut out any edges that weren't needed. Again, target weld here, and reuse assets, reuse positions. I'll go into the idea of the lamp. So with this lamp, the idea for the piece all around, basically a couple of months ago, I was talking to an art lead at a games development studio where they make more NFT games, but they've had deals, like they have the rights to work on, they're working on a Doctor Who game, they've worked on a game for the World Cup, so they have worked on like some proper stuff, and this guy's taught at schools, but one of the big, he's helped me a lot with baking, and honestly, this lamp would not be anywhere near as good as it is if it wasn't for this other like guy called Chris. But one thing he told me was to give your piece a story. Um, so when I had that first hour and I was thinking of what I can do with this and how I can make it, one idea I thought was, what if the lamp had kind of been like abused in a way? Like, I think, because obviously when I think of the lamp and the ball, the Pixar stuff, I think of Toy Story. That's my favorite animated film of all time, and I think it is Pixar's most iconic franchise. So I thought, oh well, what if the lamp is kind of like abused, like some of the toys in that film? And I was like, oh, what if the ball is also uh, abused? So I thought, oh, I'll make. It was really. So I actually thought of the light and making the light like cracked when I was thinking of the idea, but again, I just forgot to do it. So yeah, so the lamp is actually meant to be more like scared in a way. Like the posture of it is meant to be more scared and a little bit. I thought of this area of the base being kind of like its shoulder, so it's kind of like it's the lamp head would be more like here, and then it'd be hiding behind its shoulder a little bit. But unfortunately, it looks a bit more like inquisitive, like it's looking at the ball a little bit like, oh, what's that? Like in wonder, kind of like of what it is, instead of like scared. Um, and then with the ball, obviously I had to do it last minute, but we had a lunch break in between the 6 hours, so at the 3 hour mark, and in my lunch break, I was like, oh well, the lamp's meant to be abusive, so how can I make the ball look abused? And I was like, oh well, what if it has like some spikes on it, and what if it's actually been turned into a bit of a weapon, and it's more like you'd throw it at somebody's head or something. And then I was like, oh well, why don't I make it Sid, the little emo Hal child from the first Toy Story film. I was like, why if I make it his ball? So what if Sid actually owned the ball from Toy Story, from Pixar? And then I was like, oh, what if he owned the lamp as well? So I have been thinking of redoing this model and redoing the light, or doing the light, and maybe adding. I was thinking of adding the actual torus, like the actual donut loop things around the hinges, like it's here as well, because in terms of functionality and support, I think the only areas that the body doesn't work is this support here. I don't think is long enough. I think it need to be a little bit longer, like up here. Then plus if I did change the angle, so this kind of like was here, and then this was up there, and they kind of would come together, then it'd be a bit more, the lamp would look a bit smaller and it would look a bit more frayed. So that's one change. I'd make this bit longer, change the angle of this bit so it's further down, but then also this cylinder stick here I would change. I've seen it before, like my lamp that I have next to my bed, the light bulb is supported by a very thin like stick of metal, but that's straight up. Like the lamp is at the top, and then the stick goes straight down. Where obviously this is meant to be changing angles, and you're meant to be having the head up here or like there, up here, there. And if I had this cylinder that direction, it probably would just slowly fall down, and then it would slowly come to this angle anyway. So those are the two parts which I had problems with functionality wise. That was a detour, and I can't remember what I've detoured from. Yeah, I was talking about if I'd redo this lamp. I changed those little bits with the body, but then I would change the texturing of the lamp, because in the end product, which I'll show in just a little while, the lamp kind of looks normal, and it's a little bit more comedic. Like the lamp looks normal, like it's been a little bit used, got a couple of scratches, but it's the normal Pixar lamp. And then you've got the ball, which kind of just looks like the normal ball, but it's had some spikes on it. So yeah, if I would redo it, I'd make the lamp, what would I do? Probably make it like just all black, like Sid's just painted it, and I'd make the light bulb cracked. Maybe one of the screws is a little bit loose or something, or maybe he's got some horns on the top of the head or something. Just something to make sure, like, oh, people know that Sid, this is Sid's lamp. It's been a bit abused and it's a little bit scared. Same with the. Actually, I'll show you it now. This is the final lamp. This was how it ended up. Like I said, it kind of just looks like the normal lamp. Obviously, I added a little bit of texture to it, just on this bit, just so you can tell it's been used and it's not fresh. I wanted to add a little bit of dust or something, but instead I kind of went for scratches. I tried to add some finger marks as well on the head and maybe around the structure, just for when someone's trying to rotate it. But it's not that clear to see. And then, like I said, the ball's last minute, so nothing I'd change about it. Is the spikes itself. I'd make them high poly, just so it doesn't look like, just because that is the default shape, which is the cone. If I actually show you, yeah. Oh, actually, I made it even less. Oh, so if I did use the default one, it would have actually looked a little bit better. But yeah, I think well, I think there was a polygon issue as well. So yeah, I only had, because this is the default sphere, but the cones were the part that were different. And even though like it's 800 polygons, I still deleted these inside faces because they're not going to be seen. And there's, in a game like, there should be nothing that could go into the ball. But yeah, so I would have made the points a little bit more, well, more high poly, but also the paint job was, the painting for the ball was the actual very last thing I did. I tried, we couldn't, another thing is we couldn't use the internet, so we couldn't use any references, like we couldn't use any brushes from the internet for the textures. That looks a bit like it's Patrick, and Patrick's got a spiky penis. But yeah, we couldn't use any other resources. And of course, I didn't have a brush which could just do a basic star. I tried searching for it in a Substance Painter, but couldn't find it. So yeah, I kind of just had to by hand find. You can even see it here. Find a brush which has some kind of angles. So these lighter shades are one brush, and then all the darker shade. Let me change the lighting. Then all this darker red is hand brushed and actually, for some reason, under the other brushes. Whereas here, on this star, you don't have that problem, and it looks a little bit better. And if I actually, I'm not going to search that, but the actual Pixar ball has like a blue stripe going over it. Unfortunately, here, if I actually get the UV checker up, it should show. Yeah, so the ball, the cut that I made for the UV goes where I would have put the ball, put the line for the blue. So yeah, it's the worst part of the piece is the ball, which is why I don't get why I've gone on about it so much, because it's the lamp that is the main part, and the lamp is the part that I modelled a year ago and that I've modelled now. And I think, as you can see, they're done well. The first lamp was done for a little short film. Second lamp would be used in mind for a game. It was used for the competition, but it would be used for a game. And even though it's made for a game, I would use it in the short film. Like it even looks, or I'd use the high poly, because yeah, like if you look off that, the base looks well smooth. You can't really tell where the edges touch. And then for the head, it's the same thing. Like, look how smooth that looks. Look at it. It's a beautiful little cup. But yeah. So, did I actually make? I made those the same as this one. Actually, I don't know why that shape. Sorry, I'm just looking at the screws, because that actually has caused some problems, hasn't it? So the screws are actually meant to be softened, like the edges of them are meant to be softened. As on my, I've got it so that like these dotted lines are soft edges, and as you can see, there's not really a hard. The edges of the supports aren't hard, but then for the screws they are. But I think if you look here, they look a little bit better if they are softened, or a little bit more realistic, a little bit more smooth. So yeah, that's another change. So yeah, ultimately, when you look at the two shapes, I've only been modeling for a year and 3 months, so I'm not perfect. Even if there wasn't a time restraint for this model, I don't think it would be a perfect Luxo lamp anyways. But I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to do this challenge, and that I had to remodel this, because recently with modeling in general, sorry, pardon me. One of my things is, recently I've just been like looking at my work and been very self-conscious about it, and I just have been thinking like my modeling style is just a little bit scrappy. I haven't been that confident in how I compare to other people, and I just always keep thinking like, what if there's someone who's been modeling for 6 months and could make a model this good or better? What if there's someone else who has been modeling for the same amount of time as me, and they've been making like fully animated and textured and baked like characters. And I'm still gonna have those thoughts, but this competition has given me the opportunity to literally look at like a model I've made when I first started and a year later, and you can just see the changes are just quite big. Like, I don't rely on reference pictures that much. It's more, how does the model look like how's the model itself look, how's it function, how's the weight, like all of it. Like, I focus overall my process is just way better. And I mean, this model probably took me 6 hours to make when I first started. It probably took me like 2 hours to make the head look so smooth and like detailed and stuff, whereas I've managed to make this model, make another model of this, make a fucking little ball, and eventually get it textured and unwrapped so that it looks like this. And yeah, so this is kind of like the purpose of the video, just so I can like go through the models and a little bit selfishly like a pat on the back of you're doing well. And I hope that anybody else who is in the same situation that I was, or like a year ago, can kind of look at this and say, oh, well, yeah, you do get better. Maybe not like, maybe I'm not the most talented 3D artist, but as long as I've worked hard on it, and I really do love this. Although it was stressful making this lamp, and although like it was a bit of a unique experience trying to make this model in 6 hours and everything. At the end of it, I was like, I'm glad I've done it. One, so that I can make this video, but two, and have evidence that I've got better, but just because I like the process, and it's a lot of like problem solving of, okay, well, how am I going to make the lamp head? And it's like, oh, well, I'll box modeling for the head and then bevel it. And that's my analysis of my lamp done. Hopefully you've learned something, and either learnt something from this, like how I've made it, what I was looking for. Hopefully this inspired you if you are 3D modelist. I would recommend doing competitions. Now that I've done one and I've realised that I need to be faster and my planning needs to be a little bit better, I know that I'll need to work on that experience, because another thing about this competition is it was 7 hours overall, right? So it's 6 hours of modeling of the competition itself, and then it's an hour's break. So if I was working in the industry and it was an 8 hour day and it's 1 hour for lunch and then 7 hours of modeling or working, then I would not probably not be hired. So I actually need to work on my speed and planning and everything, so that if someone says, oh yeah, if you want to do a day shift or a trial, then come in, I wouldn't get to the 7 hour mark and be like, oh, I'm tired, because afterwards I was like, I need food, and I had no energy. So yeah, this has been a really good experience, and obviously I've managed to make this video and kind of like compare these models, and it's helped me be a little bit more introspective of myself, rather than like looking outwards and looking at other modelists and being like, oh, what do they do? So yeah, that's video done. I don't know if I'm gonna make more. I don't know if I'm gonna make more modeling videos, more of my portfolio. But if you want to see more of my stuff, then this is my Sketchfab page. This is what I've been uploading on mostly. This is the WAL that I was talking about that I did for the first part of the competition. then I've got this little snip feed. So this, if you want to get this URL, because then you can contact me directly, or you can look at my Sketchfab or my Instagram. My Instagram's here. I post on this a lot more, and as you can see, I should probably put my axe on my Sketchfab. But yeah, you can see I put more of this is more my old stuff. Like, I don't post really that often, and I don't make models really that quickly. But yeah, I mostly post here. So yeah, do that. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video, and yeah, have a good one.